Okay, I'd like to get started, please. Thank you. Like that, so and I'll get everybody in here talking about quiz number 3 here in a way. So definitely tomorrow for sure that Harriet Tubman will be on there. Like again, the first 1 to 2 or 3 or 4 questions. Okay. I also will take in consideration the questions might vary from first period to third and fourth because third and fourth periods you have really like a little bit more time to get into some details, more a little bit more than first period. So you guys like, oh, that's unfair. No, it's just that I know that you definitely should have that viewed, and you don't have to remember all the words, the dialogue, but some general. I will never be unfair in my questioning, but please be on that. So underground will heat up uh, in the 1850s. Let me just reiterate this very clearly, and something that will help you to sound kind of intelligent and later on in life. The underground really is people. It's not really directions, locations. It's people. All right, that will again that get you from here to there. And I think you'll kind of realize that when you're kind of taking that kind of tour from the video. All right. I cannot say enough that tomorrow's quiz probably will be challenging because, yes, that's right. There's a lot of action here in this decade. In the 1850s. It just reminds me of the 1950s and the 1960s as far as like year to year, almost every 2 years. That's going on here. All right. So you get just some big things that I'm just looking ahead here, that could be on there. You're talking about the end of the Whig Party, the formation of the Republican Party, popular sovereignty, Douglas versus Lincoln, John Brown, Dred Scott, the Compton Constitution, right? Compromise of 1850. It's so much. All right. I can't do it all in today's Apush 1.5, but I will also be doing it again tomorrow in a way, kind of like finishing it up in a way. We'll only really get to Harriet Beecher Stowe to 1852 in the next 25 minutes. All right, because there's so much to kind of come in here and digest and kind of ruminate over. So you take your time. So tomorrow's multiple choice will be pretty factual in a way that I expect you to kind of it's not always knowing the dates, but maybe somewhat the order. Civil War is not that important for Apush. Does anybody know what I mean by that? Civil War. That in a way is kind of I'm throwing you like a head fake like that and everything. So what I mean by that, what do you think probably what I mean by that? I'm implying by that. The Civil War is not that important. Yeah. Right. Well, you're gonna learn a lot of other details that's in there, uh, about the Civil War, the Trent Affair, things of that nature. But I'm saying that the battles, all the those things, the things that you've learned since first grade, like that, probably not as important as much as this decade preceding. All right, in here. Let me again start off here. We're closing up 1848, 1849, all right, and 1850. Why? What you really have to remember is this: there's two things going on here. We see clearly this is leading to war. A lot of people in a lot of localities do not see that. Well, it's bad, but it's not going to lead to war. But out in the public, newspapers, from speeches, from people brandishing their weapons in the Capitol building, congressmen, it looks like the country is being torn apart. And it's not, you know, if there's going to be a war, but when. But still, I want you to know in a lot of letters, like getting people writing that said, well, it's not going to lead to war. Even in like, March of 1861, even before like, Fort Sumter, people are saying like, it's not going to like, lead to war. But as we definitely can clearly see, all these events and things will kind of say the causes of the Civil War. 5,000 books on Lincoln, 5,000 books on the causes of the Civil War, the events that led up to the Civil War. Right? So, 1850, and you heard it, and you definitely will have it on your quiz tomorrow. But again, learn it for sure, and it's good that you already know it. Let's go through the Compromise of 1850. But first, who is trying to negotiate this? Stephen Douglas, and who else? Who? And anytime I say compromise, what should immediately go to your head? What person? Henry Clay. For review, because it always builds upon each other. What compromises? Maybe you can name one. Maybe you can name both of them that preceded 1850. Can somebody name one? Well, okay, that's the Compromise of 1850. What I want to do is back up a little bit. You're right. You're jumping ahead. You're definitely right. I don't want to like it. Let's go review what is Clay known for his other compromises before. You're fine, hon. It's again no condemnation at all. Ethan, the Missouri Compromise of 1820. If you know one of these three compromises he's responsible for, actually you should know two out of the three at least. Sarah. No, no, he's dead. No, no. The reason why I say that is because I want to get our chronology somewhat right for the 1850s in here. All right. Now, you know what the reason why you can't name the next one? I'm going to tell you the reason why you can't name. You don't know how to describe it. Missouri is easy. I don't think you can kind of like describe like the next one. You're like, I'm worried about having the proper name of this compromise. I don't remember even a proper name like that. You can just describe it. Yes. The Tariff Compromise of 1833. You could just say he was known to compromise, to get a compromise on the tariffs in the 1830s. You don't have to remember the year. So that's how you can do that. So, he runs for president several times. What party is Henry Clay? Wait, he helped found the party too. Let's get in it. Why was the party founded? Why was there real impetus for the party? Andrew Jackson. Thank you. That's good of you. Again, all this stuff that I'm always doing, I'm going back, reviewing, getting to that point. That's what you should always understand. It always builds upon one another. All right. Before you're like, Miss Price, just get to 1850. Please, just get to that. I said, well, again, you're kind of, moving ahead 2 feet, but falling behind 3 yards. So don't do that. That's why I always do this all the time before. And that, do you know Henry Clay? Maybe that's what you should do this evening instead of saying, like, I need to know everything about the 1850s. All right, that's really more important. So, brokering a compromise in the Senate here. Why is there a need? What is the volatile issue at this time in 1850, kind of 2 years afterwards?
Is it the fact of dealing with new land acquired?
From what?
Mexican.
From the Mexican American War. The territory acquired from the Mexican American War. Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. What do we do here? Right now, we have a balance before the Compromise 1850 of free and slave states. Now, Hollis said one about one of the provisions in here, and Hollis, can you repeat yourself? One of the provision Compromise 1850, so we're gonna get off. There's no slave trade in Washington, D.C. Why do I emphasize those two words? Slave trade. What is it? What am I implying? There's still slavery in Washington, D.C. Slaves will be kind of emancipated pre official emancipation in 1862. You don't have to know that part because I know that's too much for you, but I'm just saying that that's a main thing. The slave trade is banned in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was a major slave trading city. So that is big. So who probably likes that? The Northerners or the Southerners? Northerners, of course. Not so much again, as you guys know. I always want a disclaimer that they love, like, African Americans so much. But it's just like, again, that power balance. All right, we got one provision here. Go ahead, let's, raise your hand, see what you can do, can review about that or what you studied. Go ahead, Nick. The Fugitive Slave Act, a new federally enforced Fugitive Slave Act. Now, you need to take a pause because I want to talk about this. I know we're going to get to the other parts of compromise, but this is big to remember for tomorrow. It's just like, well, why is it so bad? Let me back up and give you some chronology, which everybody loves. They're like, man, I just want to learn just for tomorrow. I just don't want to know. 1793 is the first Fugitive Slave Act. Problem was, it was not federally enforced. There is a court case, 1842. Does anybody maybe want to take a guess? And it's not one of the court cases I want you to really remember about what happened. And does anybody know maybe one of the plaintiffs or the defendants in that court case in 1842? Or what state it involved? Go ahead and just read it. Prigg versus Pennsylvania. Okay, it's a double-edged sword. You don't have to remember the case. You can remember what's happening. You can use, say, previously before the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act, there was a court case. You don't have to name it sometimes when you're writing essays and things that happen. What it said was that states do not have to enforce these fugitive slave laws. And some of you guys went on Quizlet, properly so, and says that's a win for the abolitionists. Yes. Here's the seed of destruction in the future. Who is going to supposedly be responsible for the enforcement of that? The federal government. And it also says in there really that they will also be the kind of the decider or the judiciary in this kind of deciding about, like, can these bounty hunters, can these people, former masters or not current masters, retrieve their slaves? You got to stick with me because, like, I'm going to get to, like, the how egregious this Fugitive Slave Act in the eyes of the Northerners were. All right. What had Pennsylvania, what had Massachusetts kind of like, will pass in the 1850s? What have they done? They passed personal liberty laws. Once you make it beyond the Mason-Dixon line to a lot of states, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, you pretty much was free up until 1850. You get it? You pretty much was free. After this, maybe now you have to go to Canada, all right, to be truly free. After this, maybe bounty hunters don't come up and catch their slaves they're looking for. They see somebody as a former slave from 20 years ago, all right, and they bring them back. Or maybe someone, I know this doesn't happen today, they get kind of look-alike, and they sell the sheriff like, oh, looks similar to me, like that, and they get kidnapped and brought back. You said, but Mr. Price, why would Northerners get so upset at this time? They don't even like the abolitionists. That's correct. Isn't that true? Most Northerners do not like the abolitionists. Is that true? Thank you. You have to know that. Don't think about first grade. The North free and equal. The South unequal, slave. You know, the North is more nuanced than that. The Northerners, what is getting them upset is a violation, I'm going to use a big word, of states' rights, state sovereignty. It's a violation. I know we've learned, like, again, in the, really the early days and the early grades, only states' rights apply to the southern states. I know you did. I'm trying to uncondition some of your thinking, all right? And you said, but what is the incentive? Well, if Mr. Price and others are harboring a slave like Anthony Burns or William Harris, and these are people that were like, famous cases. If I'm caught, here's what could happen to me and everything. It's in here for me. I mean, I could get fined $1,000 that time. All right. I could get 6 months in prison. All right. Now think about that once again. Well, Mr. Price, what about the due process once somebody brings an affidavit to Sheriff Price, says, hey, I'm here, I have this affidavit and for this fugitive slave here. What is like again, I want to bring this slave in there. Okay, bring him or her in. Can the slave defend himself or herself? No. All right. Me as a federal official, what do I get more money for? Returning the slave or keeping the slave up north? What do I get more money for? Returning the slave. I get double the amount. And I know you might see like a fee, but it's like $10 to $20. Like again, 10, you don't give so what's my incentive? Is to return the slave. All factual here. This is actually for the South. They're loving it, but again, for their double-edged sword, they know now more Northerners are going to start understanding the kind of slavery cause. Not to a point of equality, I told you, but it's kind of a violation of our kind of way of life, our kind of laws. We don't want Mississippi laws in Pennsylvania. Is that true? But I mean, you don't want that to happen. All right. And so that's what they're saying here, what this Fugitive Slave Act is doing. So here we go. The kind of first, again, we have a lot of other causes, but first, like big nail, first hammer into the nail of the Civil War, the first strike in there. You get it? And it's a big one. Fugitive Slave Act. I cannot emphasize enough. I could probably do 2 questions on that, and just because I want to make sure that you know how egregious. Well, why? It's no big deal. As again, they had one already, but you need to know the degree why now everybody was really upset. That's why I'm just taking my time with that. Sorry, apologies on here. We got that. We got the slave trade. Can we get some of the other provisions in there? There's probably one other big sexy one in there that's in there. There's a big sexy one in there that you should know that's going to really please the Northerners. Nick.
Isn't it that California is admitted as a free state?
Yes, California will come in as a free state. Now you're going to have more free state, senators. Now, I guess in a way, for some abolitionists, they really like that because they're kind of scared about California deciding it on popular sovereignty because they would not know how that vote would go. I don't want you to think all the people in California, all these, again, abolitionists, free, anti-slavery people. But once you know that's already coming in as a free state, that you got to be in your constitution, that you can't have slavery, they're like, ooh, it's good. Kind of foreshadowing what's going to happen, again, in Kansas, Nebraska in 1854. Anything else here? Probably I'll give you the rest of it away. Like the Utah and Mexico territories, they will decide by popular sovereignty. Why isn't the abolitionists or the Northerners really too upset about that? What's the practicality of cotton farming in those areas? Very like little to nil. Like again, they don't see the future of slavery in there, so they probably would not see it really expanding. Right. And then they're going to actually, in a kind of other small provision, they're kind of pay off Texas debts and everything and stuff to uh, what they're kind of like, for damages and everything. It's like some, I think I forgot how many millions of dollars in there for that. But those are not, that's part of the provisions to the compromise of 1850. So, yes. Yes. They didn't really, because Utah does not come to be a state until like the 1890s. They had that Mormon issue like that, and New Mexico and Arizona are like one of the last two states before Alaska and Hawaii comes in the early 20th century. Right? I think if I'm probably off about this, you can always Google it, 1911 or 1912 or something like that, and everything they kind of come in. Probably off about that. So that's why it really kind of unorganized territory. What? I don't, what is that? She's doing something. I don't want about what? They're not. No, she was asking about Utah and New Mexico. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Here's the thing is, I kind of answered it because they don't come states until post Civil War. You can't be. You, yeah, it's not Missouri where people are already coming into that territory, bringing in slaves, or even Texas. So they're not having that. So they're unorganized. And by the way, you might be surprised here. Right now, at this time, that's a stronghold for what group of people in the New Mexico territory? It's a stronghold at this time. The Native Americans and lights again in there. It's a stronghold. Very good. I don't know what that was for. Sorry, guys. I was just smoking. I don't know. I'm not trying to let my tongue out. But there is definitely a stronghold. There you go. Clear. But that's a good question. I just want to make that clear. And as I said, they never did do that. Because you do want to kind of keep score here in a way about who's becoming free, who's becoming slave. Like again for political power. So that's the compromise of 1850. Again, sowing the seeds, like again, the first hammer to the nail of that in there. All right. Just as a sidebar, I only have six more minutes. I can't get to the foreign policy and all that, and I think maybe that's going to have to come later because I ain't gonna make a quiz tomorrow. The second big strike, it probably will go down there, like into the planks of wood. I hate to kind of use that analogy. It reminds me of like a National Honor Society for Habitat for Humanity when I was going out there to help them. You ever see some guys like nailing stuff and doing like carpentry work? Oh, how embarrassing. Oh, anyway, okay, I know you guys all can, nail stuff you're handy around the house, but I mean, I saying that, it's good volunteer work, but it's kind of like, when you see somebody hitting the nail 50 times trying to get it in, and you want to, like, I see you don't have too much experience in doing this. Huh? They do need practice, that's for sure. It's a different time. Don't worry, all the robots will be doing all this work anyway in the future. So, right? Okay, the big second strike. The big second strike. 1852. I'll say her name. You finish it off for me. Harriet Beecher Stowe. There's two Harriets. Shh. I know you said what. Jessica. Uncle Tom's Cabin. Came out as a series first. All right. Came out as a series first. Like it's again of like, into these newspapers. It's like Netflix. 10 episodes. Like again of did they do 13 episodes of Daredevil this year? 10. I don't know for sure because I haven't like checked it out yet. So I guess nobody's seen Daredevil yet. But anyway, it's series like that. Finally, she gets it all together and publishes it in a book. And it becomes like the best-selling book behind the Bible, 300,000 copies sold. And you say to yourself, "But Mr. Price, can you guys kind of tell me what's in that book that kind of turns people who were not really against slavery from the north, from the south, from the west to kind of like, turn their heads and say, hey, this is pretty, this is some really stuff that really gets to me here like that, by reading this book. And as you know, that is their source of entertainment. I know it's hard to believe with 50,000 things circling around your head and you can view, but they actually like reading that book. People would go to hear people read the book. People would go to the general store and that's again hear people like again and read. They would go to their churches and say this evening reading Uncle Tom's Cabin. They will make so many plays from this book here. So I know you know that about making plays off of books too. What's the content? Anything that you know of besides like Miss Bryce slavery? Is there something a little bit more specific maybe you can say that kind of will like, that you kind of know of this book? Yes. It's really the conditions. It's about the slave Eliza trying to escape from slavery with her, baby. It's about the central character, Uncle Tom, being mistreated by his horrible master, Simon Legree. Now, if you were to read from the 1850s term, there's a lot of dialect that's like Southern and almost seemingly like very stereotypical. It's not, does not translate well to 2018. All right, does not translate well to 2018. But what do people see? They see Uncle Tom being the more high moral character than the awful masters. And not all his masters are awful, but definitely Simon Legree was one of the most awful masters. They read the story where Eliza, and it's always they can picture it in their mind. Nothing like books. I know you guys don't like books, but to imagine she's trying to cross over to freedom. You hear the dogs, the hounds, the slave catchers, and she's got the baby, and she's got to go across this frozen river. The drama is there. What's going to happen? Is she going to make it like that anything to freedom? And people are really captivated by this. And like the Liberator, like all kinds of these kind of seemingly pro-abolitionist kind of like anti-slave narratives that they're banned in the South. Like again, you cannot be seen with that on there. Speaking of Harriet Tubman, she one time, a lot of times she would ask people, hey, you know, uh, free blacks or something like that, or any, like again, that, hey, can I stay here for the night? It's like, yes, you can. And then she kind of spots like the family had, Uncle Tom's Cabin and stuff. She knows they're already in danger. Just having that copy of that book. You get it? So again, it's kind of just really banned around the South and things can happen to you. That's how impactful this book was. Please, I know I only talked about really too many things. Follow up on this. Guaranteed both of these things on your quiz tomorrow in some type of capacity. Just follow up what I did so you can just add on. We have, on it, you guys are making that list. There's so much more to go over in class. And again, apologies, but I mean, there's just so much more, and we've only just hit like the first two, and I'm going to fly those two real fast tomorrow, so I can get to the Kansas, Nebraska, Dred Scott, Bleeding Chasm, Bleeding Sumner. Yes, all that is John Brown. Let's again, getting on there, and maybe even the election of 1860, Lecompton Constitution, Douglas Lincoln debates. All right, thank you.